Jorge had once been a sharp detective, known for his keen instincts and dedication to justice. However, after being unjustly suspended from the force, his life took an unexpected turn. Seeking a way to maintain his investigative spirit, Jorge reinvented himself as a shaman. In his new role, he combined his deep understanding of human nature with the mystique of spiritual guidance. Clients came to him seeking solace and answers to their personal dilemmas, unaware that Jorge was also using his sessions to uncover hidden truths and solve cases that others had abandoned. Each day, Jorge performed rituals and offered counsel in his modest, incense-filled office. He wore the garb of a shaman, complete with beads and feathers, and spoke in calming, wise tones. Yet, behind the facade, his detective mind was always at work, piecing together clues from the confessions and stories of his clients. His reputation as a healer grew, attracting a diverse clientele and allowing him to discreetly gather information. One evening, as the sun set and cast long shadows through the room, Jorge sat across from a particularly distressed client. The man's eyes were wide with fear, and his hands trembled as he described a series of disturbing events that had led him to seek Jorge's help. As the man spoke, Jorge's mind raced. This was no ordinary case. The details hinted at something far more sinister and complex than the usual ailments he encountered. Jorge listened intently, nodding thoughtfully as the man recounted his tale. He knew that accepting this case could be the key to not only helping his client, but also to proving his worth as a detective once more. As the session ended, Jorge promised to look deeper into the matter, his resolve solidifying. This new life as a shaman had brought him unexpected challenges, but it also offered a unique opportunity to continue his true calling, seeking justice. As he watched his client leave, Jorge felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, but it was a path he was determined to walk. Little did he know, this journey would soon lead him to cross paths with Livia, a woman whose presence would change everything. Jorge's latest client was a man teetering on the edge of despair. His voice trembled as he recounted the harrowing events that led him to seek Jorge's help. Strange occurrences had been plaguing his life. Mysterious noises in the night, items moving inexplicably, and a growing sense of dread that something or someone was watching him. As the man described the eerie incidents, Jorge's mind sharpened, piecing together the puzzle. This wasn't just a case of paranoia or a troubled mind. There were deeper, more sinister forces at play. The client mentioned a recent tragic event, the sudden, unexplained death of a close friend, which had only heightened his fear. Jorge leaned in, his shamanic facade giving way to the detective within. He asked probing questions, his voice calm and reassuring. What had the friend been involved in? Who were their associates? Were there any enemies who might have had a motive? The man's responses painted a picture of a life tangled with secrets and danger. His friend had been investigating a local crime syndicate, determined to expose their illicit activities. But just as he was about to unveil the truth, he met a sudden, violent end. Now, it seemed, the same forces that silenced his friend were closing in on the client. Jorge felt a familiar thrill, the rush of a complex case unfolding before him. This was no ordinary session. This was a call to action. He assured the client that he would look into the matter, blending his shamanic guise with his detective skills to uncover the truth. As the client left, Jorge sat back, the weight of the task settling on his shoulders. This was more than just a job. It was a chance to right a wrong, to bring justice where it was sorely needed. Little did he know, his investigation would soon draw the attention of someone equally determined to solve the case, Detective Livia. Their paths were about to intersect in ways neither could have anticipated. Jorge was deep into his investigation, following a lead that took him to a dimly lit alley behind an old, abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. He had just found a crucial piece of evidence, a small, blood-stained piece of cloth, when he heard a sound that made him freeze. Footsteps. Emerging from the shadows was Livia, the infamous detective known for her cold demeanor and sharp instincts. Her eyes were like ice, scanning the area before locking onto Jorge. She was a striking figure, her presence commanding attention and respect. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice as cool as her gaze. Jorge could tell she wasn't one to be easily fooled. He straightened up, meeting her gaze head-on. "I'm investigating a case," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "A client of mine is in trouble." Livia raised an eyebrow, skepticism clear on her face. "A client? You're not exactly in law enforcement anymore, are you?" Jorge felt a flicker of frustration but kept his composure. "No, but that doesn't mean I can't help people." Livia stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "Help people or interfere in active investigations?" Jorge knew he had to tread carefully. "I'm not here to interfere. I'm here to find the truth." For a moment, they stood in silence, the tension between them palpable. Then, to Jorge's surprise, Livia's expression softened, just a fraction. "All right, let's say I believe you. What have you found?" He showed her the cloth, explaining its significance. Livia listened intently, her sharp mind processing the information. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "Okay, Jorge, it looks like we're after the same thing. If you're willing to follow my lead, we might be able to solve this together." Jorge felt a mix of relief and intrigue. This was an unexpected turn, but one that could prove beneficial. He extended his hand. "Deal." Livia hesitated for a moment before shaking his hand firmly. "Deal." As they parted ways for the night, Jorge couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something significant. Working with Livia would be challenging, but also exhilarating. And perhaps, in the midst of their quest for justice, they might find something more. A connection that neither of them had anticipated. The next morning, Jorge and Livia met at the precinct to go over their findings. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each of them acutely aware of the other's presence. They were an unlikely pair, a former detective turned shaman and a seasoned investigator known for her icy demeanor. Yet, despite their differences, they were united by a common goal: solving the case. Jorge spread out the evidence on the table, meticulously detailing his discoveries. Livia listened, her eyes narrowing as she pieced together the puzzle. She interjected occasionally with sharp questions, challenging his assumptions and pushing for more clarity. Jorge responded with equal intensity, his passion for the truth evident in every word. As the hours passed, their initial friction began to give way to a grudging respect. Livia couldn't deny Jorge's keen instincts and deep knowledge of the criminal mind. Similarly, Jorge found himself admiring Livia's relentless determination and razor-sharp intellect. They were both driven by a need to find justice, and in that, they found common ground. Their collaboration wasn't without its challenges. Livia's demanding nature often clashed with Jorge's more intuitive approach. There were moments of heated debate, each of them stubbornly defending their methods. Yet, these conflicts only served to strengthen their resolve, pushing them to think creatively and cover all angles. During one particularly tense moment, they were going over a suspect's alibi when Livia's frustration boiled over. "You can't just rely on gut feelings, Jorge. We need hard evidence." Jorge met her glare with a calm determination. "And sometimes, Livia, you need to trust that instinct can lead us to that evidence." The room fell silent, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Then, Livia took a deep breath, her expression softening just a bit. "Fine, let's follow your lead this time." Jorge nodded, appreciating her willingness to compromise. They headed out, following a hunch that took them to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. As they explored the dusty rooms, Jorge felt a growing sense of anticipation. Something about this place felt right. In a forgotten corner of the building, they found a hidden stash of documents, key pieces of evidence that tied their suspect to the crime. Livia's eyes widened with surprise and admiration. "You were right," she admitted quietly. Jorge smiled, a hint of triumph in his eyes. "We were right. We're a team, remember?" As they left the building, side by side, the tension between them had eased, replaced by a growing camaraderie. They had proven that together, they were stronger and more effective. And while the path ahead was still fraught with challenges, both Jorge and Livia felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. In the days that followed, their partnership deepened. Late nights at the precinct, poring over files and chasing leads, became the norm. They learned to anticipate each other's moves, their collaboration becoming almost seamless. And amidst the tension and collaboration, something else began to bloom. A connection that neither of them had expected, but both were beginning to welcome. As Jorge and Livia delved deeper into the case, they unearthed clues that pointed to a complex web of deceit and betrayal. Late nights turned into early mornings as they pored over files and chased down leads, each discovery pulling them further into the mystery. One evening, Jorge was examining a series of photographs when something caught his eye. A detail in the background of one image, a distinctive tattoo on the arm of a man passing by, matched the description given by their witness. He called Livia over, excitement in his voice. "Look at this. It's the tattoo our witness mentioned." Livia leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the photo. "That's him," she confirmed. "We need to find out who this man is." Their search led them to an underground network, a place where secrets were traded like currency. Through a series of covert meetings and careful inquiries, they identified the man in the photograph. He was a known associate of a powerful figure in the city's criminal underworld, someone who had the resources to cover up a murder. As they gathered more evidence, Livia received an anonymous tip. She listened intently as the voice on the other end of the line provided crucial information about the night of the murder. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to come together. In a moment of clarity, Livia realized the implications of their findings. She turned to Jorge, her expression serious. "This isn't just about a single murder. There's a whole operation behind this, and it goes deeper than we thought." Jorge nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to expose them, but we have to be careful. If they know we're onto them, they could disappear without a trace." Their determination to seek justice only grew stronger. They planned their next move meticulously, aware that one wrong step could jeopardize everything. The tension between them was palpable, but so was the growing trust. They had come to rely on each other's strengths, their partnership evolving into something more profound. One night, as they were going over their notes, Jorge paused and looked at Livia. "You've changed, you know. When we first met, you were so guarded, so cold. But now, I see someone who cares deeply, someone who's willing to fight for what's right." Livia met his gaze, a soft smile playing on her lips. "And you've shown me that sometimes the past can be left behind. We don't have to be defined by our mistakes." In that moment, surrounded by evidence and the weight of their mission, they found a sense of peace. They were no longer just two people working together. They were a team, united by a common goal and an undeniable connection. As they prepared to take down the operation, they knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. But they also knew that, together, they could face whatever came their way. The discoveries they had made were not just about solving a case. They were about uncovering the truth within themselves and finding the courage to embrace a future filled with possibilities. The night was thick with tension as Jorge and Livia approached the abandoned warehouse. They had tracked the killer to this location, following a trail of deceit and danger. Every step they took was calculated, every breath a reminder of the gravity of their mission. Inside, the atmosphere was dark and foreboding. Shadows danced on the walls, cast by the flickering light of a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. Jorge signaled for Livia to stay close as they moved deeper into the building, their senses heightened by the silence. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the cavernous space. A figure emerged from the shadows, the killer's cold eyes locking onto theirs. Jorge's heart raced, but his resolve was unshakable. This was the moment they had been working towards, the culmination of their relentless pursuit of justice. "You're not getting away this time," Livia said, her voice steady and filled with determination. The killer smirked, his confidence unnerving. "You really think you can stop me? You have no idea what you're up against." Jorge stepped forward, his expression fierce. "We know exactly what we're up against, and we're not afraid." In a swift motion, the killer lunged towards them. Jorge and Livia reacted instinctively, years of training and experience guiding their movements. The confrontation was intense, a flurry of punches, kicks, and desperate grapples. The stakes were high, each blow carrying the weight of their quest for justice. Livia managed to land a solid hit, sending the killer stumbling back. But he recovered quickly, his anger fueling his attacks. Jorge saw an opening and took it, tackling the killer to the ground. They struggled, each fighting for control, but Jorge's determination gave him the edge. "Enough," Livia shouted, drawing her weapon and aiming it steadily at the killer. "It's over." The killer froze, realizing he was outmatched. His eyes darted between Jorge and Livia, weighing his options. Finally, he raised his hands in surrender, a sneer of defiance still etched on his face. "You'll never get the full story," he hissed. "There's more at play here than you can imagine." Jorge and Livia exchanged a glance, knowing their battle was far from over. But for now, they had won. They had confronted the killer and brought him to justice, a significant step towards unraveling the larger conspiracy. As they secured the killer and called for backup, the adrenaline began to fade. Jorge looked at Livia, a mixture of relief and pride in his eyes. "We did it." Livia nodded, a rare smile breaking through her usually stoic demeanor. "Yes, we did." In that moment, they realized their bond had grown stronger through the trials they had faced. Their partnership, forged in the heat of danger and conflict, had blossomed into something deeper. Together, they had faced their fears and emerged victorious. As they watched the killer being taken away, they knew the journey ahead would still be challenging. But they also knew they had each other, and that made all the difference. Their story was just beginning, a tale of love, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of those who dare to seek the truth. As the dust settled after their intense confrontation with the killer, Jorge and Livia found themselves standing in the quiet aftermath, their hearts still racing. The adrenaline of the chase had masked the growing feelings between them, but now, in the stillness of the night, those feelings were impossible to ignore. They returned to Jorge's makeshift office, the room filled with the artifacts and symbols of his dual life as a shaman and a detective. The flickering candlelight cast a warm glow, creating a stark contrast to the harsh fluorescent lights of the precinct. Livia sat down, exhaustion evident in her posture, but her eyes sparkled with a newfound softness when she looked at Jorge. "Tonight was intense," she said, her voice a whisper in the quiet room. Jorge nodded, sitting across from her. "It was. But we made it through, together." There was a silence, thick with unspoken words. Livia hesitated, then reached out and placed her hand over his. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad we were thrown together on this case. You've shown me a different side of things, a different side of myself." Jorge felt a warmth spread through him at her touch. He had always admired Livia's strength and dedication, but now he saw the vulnerability beneath her tough exterior. "You've taught me a lot too, Livia, about persistence, about never giving up, and about opening my heart." They sat there, hand in hand, the world outside fading away. The danger they had faced had forged a bond between them, stronger than anything they had known before. They were no longer just colleagues or partners, they were something more. Jorge stood up and moved closer to Livia, pulling her into a gentle embrace. She leaned into him, her breath warm against his neck. "There's so much uncertainty ahead," she murmured. "I know," Jorge replied, holding her tighter, "but we'll face it together, no matter what comes our way." Their lips met in a tender kiss, a promise of what could be. The room seemed to shimmer around them, the magic of their newfound connection palpable in the air. In that moment, all the fear and danger melted away, leaving only the pure, undeniable truth of their love. As they pulled apart, Jorge smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Livia's face. "Let's take it one step at a time. We have a lot to figure out, but I know we can do it." Livia nodded, her eyes shining with determination and affection. Together, hand in hand, they faced the future, ready to take on whatever challenges awaited them. The path ahead was uncertain, but their love was a beacon, guiding them through the darkness. And so, amidst the danger and chaos, a beautiful love story began to blossom, promising hope, healing, and a chance at happiness for both Jorge and Livia.